Greetings and salutations, and we are back with more of my Ironman Final Fantasy challenge. Where we last left off, of course, two of my party members are dead, and this whole Ironman challenge is if they die, they're dead permanently. I'm not allowed to resurrect them, and I have to just kind of plod along till my entire party dies. Of course, the downside is this: I have to grind more, because if I don't grind more, I'm in trouble. Like, big trouble. And I think one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about was I mentioned philosophy in another. It was in the Minecraft Woodless one. The thing is I think there's also philosophy that can be found in video games, right? And I don't necessarily mean like profound nuggets of wisdom, but more so how a video game company approaches how they approach how the game is made, or how they approach how they want the game to be presented, right? And there is that philosophy to it. And it's like, look, folks, companies, just for the sake of everything, just make a game that's fun, that controls well, and the controls don't even have to matter. I mean, getting over it with Bennett Foddy had abysmal controls. I Am Bread had abysmal controls, and yet people loved it. They ate it up. They wanted to play it more and more and more. I mean, with a few notable exceptions, of course. But you take a look at a game's fun factor and how they're and the community service. Apologies. That's the joys of unediting. That's the joys of having unedited content. You just get to hear all the me hacking up phlegm, which I know is not appealing, but, you know, hey, at least you know everything you see here is genuine. It's not manufactured behind some rogue AI typing away. Anyway. When you take a look at other games, like, you had the abysmal controls of, you know, I Am Bread, Bennett Foddy, QWOP. People loved QWOP, with a few notable exceptions. But yet, they still produced a game that had a charm to it, had a fun factor, made you want to play it. I mean, obviously, because it's a rage game, and everybody gets that whole mentality, I guess, of saying, I'm not gonna rage at the game. Ha! Watch me. And then they inadvertently end up raging at the game. I'd have to say there's like a subtle nuance to that, right? Like, what exactly is rage? Are you talking like breaking your keyboard, throwing your controller style rage? Or are you talking like just cussing out the game because things didn't go your way rage? For me, I think it's the former is exactly what it is, right? Like people breaking their controllers, getting upset and, you know, cussing at the screen. Yeah, that's not really rage, but like if you're getting up out of your chair and smashing furniture and smashing controllers and getting physically violent with hardware, yeah, that's when you've kind of meandered over into the whole, I just can't believe I did that. That's when you've kind of meandered into the whole, you know, maybe you should seek anger counseling type of therapy, you know? And I never got to that point. I'd get to the point where I'd be frustrated. Absolutely. 100%. Like, there are certain games that it would just get just enough under your skin where you just kind of sat there seething behind your teeth, like, just... And you'd be sitting there seething about it, right? People have been there. I've been there, you've been there, we've all been there, right? And there'll be times where I will slap my knee because something goes wrong, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Can you believe that? But I don't ever take it out on the hardware. Why? I'm slapping my knee. My knee can take it. It's, you know, it's my knees. They can handle it, you know. Eventually I'm going to become old and arthritic, but They can handle it for now. Meanwhile, why would anybody go out there and voluntarily burn up $100 on a controller because you're upset? That's just called stupidity. So I've never really understood that point of being that enraged at a game, where you have to take it on something, right? Pokemon Unite, for me, is a game that makes me extremely salty. But it's not the game itself. The game itself functions fine. The game itself controls as it should. Obviously, it's an online game, so you're going to have problems with, like, connectivity issues and lag. Those exist. Fine and dandy, whatever. Shrug it off, right? It's, you know, it's a Friday or a Saturday or Tuesday. You know, it's just, it's a day of the week that ends in Y. You got lag. You deal with it, right? And the game functions as it should. Rarely is it something that happens in the game that is pure shenanigans, and you look at it and you're like, this game is absolutely, you know, gotta be twisting my nipples right now. It's not the game. It's the other players on my team that don't have a cognitive thought in their brain, or they don't see how to collapse on an event, or how to collapse on an enemy team that's trying an event. That's what gets me salty. So that's other player interaction. But it's not the actual game itself. But I never understood the philosophy of getting angry at games. But then again, I've also never understood the philosophy of making a game specifically to enrage people, either. So, there's that. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something. What are these game companies thinking? Like, when they're developing a game, are they sitting there thinking, well, the latest thing is a pixel-shaded roguelite, blah, 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 and they go down through this list of things that have already been established and beaten to death? Like, is that what they're doing? Is this an honest truth? You know, that's an honest question here. That's a truthful question I'm asking. Because if that's what they're doing, then they should probably reassess their strategy. Because I don't think it works very well, right? Because what you'll inevitably have is let me check that, because I don't even know what my one guy can wear. Give me a second. That's the BC area in the map. Hold on. I still have the documentation from the original game. So, there it is. This is the dungeon map. Dungeon map's on the bottom. If you can, it might be hard to see because the camera's gonna block them out. NVIDIA Broadcast doesn't like it, but I have the dungeon maps, and then I have the equipment list, that what people can wear. And I need to see if Red Mage can wear. They can wear the copper bracelet. I don't care about that. They cannot wear the iron armor. Good thing I did not buy it. Can they wear the shield, though? No. Well, they're just kind of SOL, aren't they? Red Mage can use large dagger, scimitar, a saber, a longsword. He can also use the silver sword, so I'm gonna probably pick up that before I head out to the cave. That'll probably be after I pick up, like, Ice 2, because I think Ice 2 is gonna be a really good spell later on. So I'm probably gonna do that first. But I digress, and I'm gonna go back to what I was talking about. You'll notice, like, video games will pick up on a trend, and they will continue that trend. And it's like, but why? Like, I don't get it. You're, like, by the time you get to what you're making as a trend, it's gone past you. It's back there, and now they're onto something else. Take, for example, the game Mugenics, right? Mugenics came out, and it's roguelike, like, I don't know how I want to label it. It's a roguelike kind of like Rogue Legacy meets Uma Musume meets Cats That Fight. So, like, maybe it's kind of like where, kind of like Pokemon in that sense, but without the type advantages. So it's something like that, but you take a look at it, and now you watch, because of the success of Mugenics, every single insufferable game developer over the next year and a half is going to bring out a pixelated or hand-drawn roguelike blah, blah, blah. And they're literally going to do this, and they're going to pump and dump and make the market fill. Don't do that. Because what that does is then that waters down the entirety of the gaming world, right? And what you end up getting is you end up getting multiple versions of the same low-quality product. I'm not saying that, AAA is doing anything better, because they're not. They do the same thing, right? And they kind of need to get away from that, to be perfectly honest with you. Like with Blizzard's latest iteration, everybody looks at the path of the Warlock and they're like, okay, yeah, you get new zones, you get a new class, you get new rune words and new set items and you basically get new content. Do you get a whole new act? No, you don't get a whole new act, at least not to my knowledge. But at the same time, does it really matter that you didn't get a new act? No. And the reason it doesn't matter is because the people that are playing it, or the people that wanted to play it and play the Warlock, are people that A, love the franchise, and B, wanted to see something new and refreshing on an older franchise. Now, why does that work for Diablo 2 but not others? Because Diablo 2 had a core framework, right? And the framework wasn't bad. You know how they say if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Diablo 2 is a shining example of that. Not to say that it wasn't broken before, right? But believe me, it was broken to pieces before. Okay, so he has a saber. So if I was to buy him a weapon, it would have to be the silver sword. And I apologize for yawning. I didn't get a whole lot of sleep last night. Which makes the next video I'm going to record even better, because I've reinstalled Helldivers 2. But no, it's... Diablo 2 used to be a mess. Oh yeah, it was a complete mess. Absolutely. It was a tragedy. And then when they brought out Lord of Destruction, it made it a lot better. Because it allowed for synergies within the spec itself. So, like, the points you put in up here go and synergize with this one, and then this one, and then this one. And sometimes they synergize with things across the other trees. And that sort of synergistic effect was what made Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction great, right? If you were to go back and play regular Diablo 2 without any sort of patches, the game is abysmal. Like, you boot up regular 1.00 Diablo 2, 1.0 Diablo 2, and yes, you can find a copy of it someplace, even if you have to sail the 7 seas. You can find a copy of it for 1.00. And it was in its unpatched glory. And then try it. It's not as glorious as it seems. A lot of things were broken, nothing had synergy, and yet everybody loved the game, because it was vastly superior to its predecessor, Diablo 1. Now don't get it twisted, Diablo 1 was a really good game, because that was vastly superior to its predecessor, which was a MUD. They took MUDs, they took Dungeons & Dragons, and they said, hey, what if we put it together in a slow-moving RPG? And so they did. And now Diablo 1 is history. And Diablo 2 has a very strong core. And by that, I mean, you have a % chance to hit, and you have a % chance to fail hitting. And it's based on your dexterity. Like, I don't know, every other fantasy game right around that era. But now hit percent has gone to the wayside. They reserved it for things like MMORPGs. Guild Wars doesn't have that problem, if you've noticed. Oh, actually, you probably didn't notice because I didn't record it. But anyway, if you go and you play Guild Wars, they didn't have the problem of abilities missing, right? They didn't have a hit percentage. Same thing with Ashes of Creation before it went belly up. You take a look at what they've done with these games, they've all but removed hit rating and hit chance. Original World of Warcraft had hit chance, and then it had it all the way through the expansions, and it just got systematically easier and easier to hit to get to the hit cap, which, okay, whatever. It doesn't, that's neither here nor there. But why did people get away from it? Like, why do these companies shy away from something that is literally hardcore baked into every RPG, tabletop or otherwise? I don't get it. Like, look at Baldur's Gate. Why do you think Baldur's Gate 3 sold so well? Why do you think Baldur's Gate 2 sold well? Why do you think the original Baldur's Gate sold well? Is it took Dungeons and Dragons, which I can't do because my rolling sucks, and it basically put it as a computer. So with the computer rolling the dice, it's not my RNG, it's the computer's RNG, right? So they set this up in such a way that the game is gonna roll the dice for you to see if you pass the saving throw and the certain checks that you need to have. Like, oh, you have to do a saving throw for that trap. It uses your dexterity plus whatever you roll versus the trap's lethality, and so on and so forth. And it did all those computations. Why didn't they keep that system going forward in action RPGs? They have it, I believe, in Path of Exile 2. Why do you think Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile, subsequently, do better than Diablo? Why do you think Path of Exile did better than Diablo 3? But not as good as Diablo 2? In terms of overall, players. And no, it's not their massive sphere grid. That's not the problem. The massive sphere grid's the least of their worries. The reason why it did so well, and this is going to make everybody laugh, at least to a degree. The reason why Diablo did it better than Path of Exile, the original Diablo 2 did it better than Path of Exile, was Path of Exile just kind of took the whole Diablo format of you are a class, and you get these certain abilities given to you based on your class identity, which is what most MMOs have, and it said, now that you have your class identity, that's great and all, you now get to move forward and you can have your little adventure, right? Path of Exile said, you don't have a class identity, you're just this person, and whatever gems you put in, that's your class. That confuses people. And remember, they were all coming from a time where you had class identity, where people had to play cleric, where people had to play bard, and so on and so forth, right? And what do we have now? We now have my warriors casting spells? That's weird, I guess. But it kind of threw people off guard, and they don't like that. I think that's one of the reasons they detracted away from it. Like, for example, you play... I'm going to keep going back to it because it's a great example. You go back to Diablo 1. It was free-flowing, yes. You could put spells on your warrior, but it required intellect. And the wizard had more intellect than others. But there was no other real skills in the game. It was just you go in and attack things. The skills that you picked up allowed your adventurer to proceed through the dungeon. Which was, all things considered, more true of an isekai anime than, say, a Dungeons and Dragons theme, because that one has classes and class identity. So when Diablo 2 slipped into that whole class identity shoe, people were like, hey, cool, it's like D&D. You hear Barbarian, you can pretty much guarantee he's going to shout at his opponents, get really angry, smash things with a big two-handed weapon, and probably get drunk. That's a valid assumption, right? And so, you didn't expect things like a Barbarian to have things like Berserk, where they do magical damage, but have no defense. But there's a reason why they did that. Because there's things in the game that are immune to physical. And they created a system for every class to be able to get over that immunity so that they're not stuck in a solo soft lock. They had the wherewithal to think about that. I only have one pure. That's not good. But you could hear a class and go, oh, okay, cool. You knew exactly what to expect. Does that work? No. I thought maybe I could hit him with Cure and hurt them. Apparently not. Whoopsie doodle. But it's just kind of cool how, you know, when you get that association of class identity and you're like, ah, yes, I know exactly what that does, because you hear the word necromancer. You can expect corpses, curses, shadow damage. You hear the word sorceress or wizard, and you can expect fire and lightning and ice and arcane energies crashing down on people. You get a picture, right? So then you get thrown into Path of Exile 2, and you hear Marauder. Okay, a Marauder's a guy that goes and attacks camps full of people and steals their stuff. That's a Marauder. Which now you can understand why they were exiled. Okay. I can kind of see it. I wonder what they're going to have for base skills. You get into the game and all you have is attack. And then you pick up your first gem and it's like, congratulations, there's your first skill. And you're like, why am I getting my skills from a gem? Shouldn't they be innate to my class? You see now where it's a little off-putting for the bog standard RPG players that have migrated from a game like Baldur's Gate, have migrated from a game like Diablo, and they come to Path of Exile and they're like, where's my skills? And then they open the skill tree and they see all those spheres on the sphere grid. And they start having PTSD flashbacks from Final Fantasy sphere grid. And they start sitting there rocking in place like, if I don't look at it, it can't hurt me. Because, trust me, if you remember the old sphere grids back then, bad things, man. Yeah. Makes you wonder. But that's what kind of drove down. Because if you think about it, look at it by the numbers, right? Path of Exile was free. Costs you nothing. You get into the game, it's free to play, you can play online as long as you want, unlimited time. You're not restricted by characters, you're not restricted by anything at all. And it had less players than Diablo 2 for a very long time. Why? It's not because Diablo 2 was a better game. They both had their advantages, they both had their disadvantages. It's because Path of Exile 2 was very intimidating to the common player. It still is. Or Path of Exile 2, Path of Exile is still intimidating to the common player. I don't know squat about Path. In terms of what's itemized, you know, what itemization is good, what itemization is bad. But to me, the tooltips don't really help either. And it's like, back to the philosophy discussion, what was their philosophy coming into Path of Exile? We want to make a sandbox action RPG? Is this kind of what that is? Okay, why? Why specifically a sandbox action RPG? And then it makes you sit there and go, okay, well, was somebody at the company doing a bit of day drinking when they thought this up? Because it really makes you question. I'm not saying that the game is bad at all. The game is great. You know, I still play Path of Exile 2. I had to uninstall it to make room for other games for Free Game Fridays and whatnot. But then I've recently reinstalled it, and I will be going back to playing it. But it just makes me wonder, what's the design philosophy behind it? And with that design philosophy, like, what were they aiming for? And then you take a look at, like, Diablo 3 and Diablo 4's design philosophy. The problem with those games, and yes, there are many, is they're catering to... well, not to be very offensive to people, because I'm not saying it in an offensive manner. But Diablo 3 and Diablo 4 cater to the Adderall patient. People that have been put on Adderall and are medicated for being hyperactive. Pretty much. Back in my day, they used to call it Ritalin. But that's who it's designed for. Because you have to have lightning-fast reflexes to min-max your character, and your damage goes parabolic, but your life total doesn't. And so there's no real... like... It went back to the whole thing that I couldn't stand about Diablo 3, which was... I called it the high noon mentality, right? In Diablo 3, you were playing a class, and you would run into a pack of monsters, and you would be like, draw. And if you drew first, you won. That was Diablo 3 in a nutshell. And if you didn't, you lost. And it all boiled down to, did you shoot first? Eh? And it shouldn't do that. Like, you shouldn't have games where you can get one shot by everything if you're not paying attention. That's not good design, folks. That's actually terrible design. But I just want to be a fly on the wall of these companies when they come up with an idea of, we have to market a game that people will want to play, and then we have to market it in such a way that we're either going to set the trend, and if we aren't the trend setter, we're forgotten. Take a look at, say, Helldivers, right? Helldivers set a trend. It took 4-player co-op. It took a multiplayer shooter game and said, there's your multiplayer shooter. It's 4-player co-op. And people are like, but where's the PvP? Because what they grew up with? They grew up with Halo, Modern Warfare, GoldenEye, Perfect Dark. They grew up with constant first-person shooter PvP, third-person shooter PvP, Gears of War. But when you told them, hey, here's a co-op, they're kind of looking at you confused. Until they actually played it and realized it's got its own difficulty. And then they liked it. Now, that is by no means a guarantee. That is by no means, like, that's not a metric you can kind of sit there and say, ah, yes, this is how we're going to do it. No. But their design philosophy worked, and they did set a trend. And then since that point, you had a whole bunch of people come out with different games that are essentially the same. Like, not really forced co-op, but sometimes they had elective co-op and forced co-op. Bit of both. And it's like, if you're not setting the trend, you're falling behind. something my brother told me. This is, again, back to more video game philosophy. And the philosophy is this. This is Nintendo. So, I'm not going to pull that meme like, leave the billion-dollar company alone. Not at all. They are... If you're a publicly traded company, you are allowed criticism. If you're a privately traded company, you're allowed criticism too. But what I'm getting at is Nintendo has decided to re-release Fire Red and Leaf Green. It's on the eShop. Now, of course, you're going to have a whole bunch of Pokemon fans that are going to be like, but why? Well, before you jump to the whole, grab your torches and pitchforks, let's burn them down because they're trying to squeeze blood from a stone. I agree with you on that. They are trying to squeeze blood from a stone. As for the reason why, I can answer that. With Pokemon Champions coming out later this year, and a vast plurality of the Pokemon players being competitive styled Pokemon players, that's the reason they're bringing out Fire Red and Leaf Green. Because if you want to make a new Pokemon, you're going to need a place that can have and house Pokemon to breed, and then you can breed for the new IVs and so on and so forth. Because Pokemon Champions isn't really going to have that. Pokemon Champions is just going to be a place to do battles. So knowing this, you are now left with the option of you do your battles on Pokemon Champions, but how do you create the next generation of person with, that needs to have this moveset? You can't change the moveset, so as far as I know, in Pokemon Champions. You can't do anything there. So now you have to export them via Pokemon Home and import them into your cartridge. On the Switch, anyway, the virtual. They're not putting it in the virtual console, which boggles my mind. I don't know why they just don't bring that out. Yearly fee. But, nope. They're going to charge $20 and they're completely remastering it like they did with the Diamond and Pearl one. They're not going to have Ilka remaster it. I know that's... A lot of people are like, oh, thank God. But what they are doing is they're having somebody remaster it. Now, I personally didn't mind the Diamond and Pearl remaster. And I will tell you why. And I give hats off to Ilka for doing this. Ilka realized that people now have knowledge that previous people did not. Right? When we were growing up, you played Diamond and Pearl, guess what? You didn't know what Pokemon gave which individual values. Or effort values, sorry. Which Pokemon gave effort values. You just knew that Pokemon gave, like, a type of value, right? So, like, Magikarp, you knew, did something. That's as far as it went. Alright, I need to get out the map for this one, so I don't want to spend too much time here. I got a party that's not all there. Alright, so if I go up there, it puts me in that room with a whole bunch of stuff. Cool. The crown's down there, and that's going to be guarded by wizards that'll wipe me. So I'm going to go up top first, and then I will go down for the crown later. So upward. Okay. Maps help. But Pokemon Diamond and Pearl was like, okay, well, now that you know what all of this EV effort values, it didn't give me my fire back? That's not good. Maybe I needed to... Oh, I needed to buy a house. That's bad. Anyway. We're gonna try to loot what's upstairs and then get out of here. I don't have enough spells. So Ilka, when they made the remake, said, okay, everybody's got that knowledge now. They put on their best little troll face, and they're like, the gym leaders now have individual values that are not randomized on their Pokemon, but more so, but the individual values are now done in such a way that they are beneficial to the Pokemon they're on. So if it's a Miltank, it's HP and defense. And that's what they did. They did that so much so that Champion Cynthia, which everybody feared as a... You know, they feared Champion Cynthia back in the old Diamond and Pearl. She's poo compared to the new Champion Cynthia. The new Champion Cynthia will ruin your day and eat your breakfast and take your lunch money. Because hers are guaranteed max individual values in the stats they need most. So like her Garchomp has quite literally max attack, max speed. Yeah. So she's kind of dangerous. And her Chainsey's got max special defense, max HP. It's designed to make... It's designed to make the player really have to work to try to win the game. And they've done that. And they've done it beautifully. Now, if the new ones have that for the Fire and Fire Red Leaf Green, I know why they're doing it. It's to make the game harder, and it's to update it that way. Now, where I have a problem is they're charging $20 for it. And I'm thinking that's way too much. That's not $20 for a bundle. That's $20 for one. That's a bit extreme. I understand why, I understand why they did it. I understand they need to do it to give a back end for players to breed their Pokemon, and they needed to have a place that they could do it that would coexist with Pokemon Champions. Now, they also put it in there for the other reason, and this is something else my brother and other people don't understand. There are a lot of people now hitting the Pokemon competitive scene, and they've never played before. And because they've never played before, they don't have some of the early Pokemon. So this gives them the option to have early Pokemon that they can then take into Pokemon Champions. Are you serious? Very first hit, poisoned. Really? Now you're just yanking my chain. Gum you have to blow up with spells. Noted. And again, another thing I wanted to mention. If I fail at this game, and I fail out, leave a comment at the bottom and tell me what party do you run with next. I can't even say if, it's more of a when, because this party will eventually die. He's dead. Looking kind of grim. Looking very grim. They were just not having Chip being alive. They were like, nope, he's dead. Okay, you kind of have to cure yourself. Come on! He's not gonna make it. That's a crit, and now he's dead. He's at 1 HP. This run is effectively over right now. 33, 26, critical hit. He's dead. And that's the run. So, what's my next party gonna be? Leave a comment. Tell me what my next party is going to be to try the Ironman challenge. This one made it pretty far. They made it to 10. I lost Lee at 1. I lost Jean at 6. I lost these two just now. And I knew I was going to when I saw the gargoyles and I didn't have any spells left. I should not have pressed my luck, but it is what it is. At any rate, tell me what party I should make next. I hope everybody has a fantastic evening, a wonderful tomorrow. Well, actually, I hope everybody enjoyed this video. And I hope everybody has a fantastic evening, a wonderful tomorrow. And as always, have a good one.